ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm John Weeks, and this is The Leader. With crime documentaries becoming ever popular and TV court cases in the US picking up huge worldwide audiences, we're taking a look at why there's been such a surge of interest in crime, law and justice in recent years. And to do that, we're speaking with the US lawyer behind one of the most unique cases in history, brought to life in 2018 through the Netflix documentary series The Staircase. David S Rudolf was the attorney defending Michael Peterson, the American man charged with murdering his wife, Kathleen, at their home in North Carolina back in 2001. David has since become one of the most respected lawyers in the States, specialising in high-profile and complex criminal and civil rights cases. So David joins me now. Now David, I've read your backstory on your website, explaining the things that led you into your career. Can you give us a bit of an outline about what those things were and how they changed your perspective to go into the career that you have?
Well, I guess I was sort of primed for it just because of the times I grew up in. There was a lot of protest. Government was not necessarily viewed positively by those in my generation back then, at least. And so, I think I was always a little bit skeptical of government. But then, of course, we had Kent State, where people who were protesting the war in Vietnam, students were literally shot by the National Guard on a college campus. And then, of course, we had Watergate, and we had John Mitchell, who was the Attorney General of the United States, being indicted and then convicted for obstructing justice. And so, I think as a result of those kinds of experiences, it sort of solidified my desire to sort of be a shield between the government and individuals to the extent I could. And that's, I think, what sort of pushed me into doing my criminal defense work when I got out of law school.
And some of your most famous work is, of course, your defense of Michael Peterson, brought to life in this Netflix documentary, The Staircase. Can you tell us a little bit about how that documentary came about and what it's like for you watching that story back?
Yeah, well, let me start with the first question. So it was really quite by happenstance. Jean de Lestrade, who's the director, was looking for a story involving the American criminal justice system where a person who had the means and the resources to hire a defense counsel and defend himself was on trial. And he happened to find us just about the time that case was starting up. We talked with him. I was impressed with the fact that they were not so much interested in guilt or innocence, but what they were really interested in was the American criminal justice system. And my client really wanted to have a documentary film crew there because I think he felt like it would keep the proceedings fairer if the authorities in Durham knew that what they were doing was being documented in a film. So all of that came together and we agreed to do it. And, I think on balance, it was a really good decision. And I'm very happy that we made that decision. In terms of, the first time I watched the actual documentary, I was in Paris in 2004 or 5, and Michael Peterson was doing his life imprisonment sentence. And it was incredibly depressing to watch those 8 episodes, the original 8 episodes. Of course, the next time I saw any of it, it was after 2011 when we had gotten him a new trial. And then, of course, when Netflix bought it, I saw it then with the extra 2 episodes about the Alford plea. And by that point, it was quite a different experience because I knew that the outcome was going to be positive. And so I could appreciate it much more for sort of what it showed about how the American criminal justice system worked and, more importantly, how it didn't work. The first time around, I was just watching it and bemoaning how a jury could possibly find him guilty and sort of questioning myself and trying to understand what had really happened. The second time I saw it, I wasn't burdened by any of that. And it was a much more enjoyable way of watching the film.
And obviously, the documentary has become so popular. It's one of quite a number of court cases, actually, that have either been turned into documentaries or series. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that for the better documentaries, it's because these documentaries show the imperfections in the system. And I think they serve, therefore, to educate people who thought that their systems were working pretty well and really didn't worry too much about wrongful convictions or things going sideways in the criminal justice system. I think it sort of opened their eyes to the kinds of problems that those of us who have worked in the system for a long time knew existed. So I think that's been an eye opener for a lot of people. And then, of course, they're just amazingly compelling narratives of abuses and, of human beings who have gone through incredible trials and tribulations and come out sort of on top eventually. So I think it's just got a natural storyline in addition to having incredible educational value for people who thought they knew what the system was like but are finding out differently.
Let's take a break now. Stay there for part 2, when David will give his thoughts on the recent Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard court case.
No matter what people say or say they've done, you can't really get a full flavor of the evidence in a trial by watching, what you see in the news or what a particular website may choose to show you.
So, David, one of the court cases that has caught a lot of global coverage this year, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. So much was made of that, but also how social media played a bit of a role during it. What did you make of the case and the use of social media during it?
Well, I think that I prefer for cases to be decided in the courtroom and not on social media, because no matter what people say or say they've done, you can't really get a full flavor of the evidence in a trial by watching bits and pieces on Zoom or, what you see in the news or what a particular website may choose to show you. So I personally think that social media can have a very negative effect on decision makers if they're aware of what's going on in the social media. And of course, judges instruct jurors not to tune into social media, but it's very hard these days to avoid it. Even if you're avoiding it, people in your family or your friends or your acquaintances or your workmates are all looking at it and you're hearing. So I think it's a dangerous phenomenon, to be honest, because I think it can have a real impact on what goes on inside the courtroom.
So would you bring in a rule, if you had the powers, to sort of stop people from commenting on cases through social media while they're ongoing?
Well, I think that would require more power than I could possibly have. But yes, I think that in the ideal world, the judge and the jury should be focusing solely on what's happening in front of their eyes and their ears. I think they should be shielded from whatever social media influences are out there or other media influences are out there, because it's not just social media. In the United States, of course, you have pretrial publicity, you have perp walks, you have prosecutors giving press conferences when they arrest somebody. So I think all of that really functions against the interests of a fair trial. And I would just as soon see cases tried on the evidence that is adduced in court.
And for you, David, obviously the Staircase has been such a popular documentary, and I know you are a bit of a sucker for justice. Are you hopeful for more cases going forward that you can take on that could become documentaries in future?
I like that, sucker for justice. I may have to get a T-shirt made up, or maybe you can get one made up and send it to me. Sucker for justice. But I don't think there's going to be another documentary that can possibly match the impact of the Staircase. And here's why. I allowed them the kind of access that is almost unheard of. I think it is unheard of. They got to film things that most of the time, no lawyer would allow them to film. And I allowed it only because I trusted them and I had certain guarantees in place that I believed they would abide by, such as that they wouldn't release any of this film until all appeals had been exhausted, such as they would send the video to France every night so that a prosecutor couldn't subpoena it and get a hold of our plans. So, and they agreed to all those things. So if they hadn't agreed to those sort of preconditions, I wouldn't have agreed to do it. I doubt that an American documentary filmmaker would have agreed to it then or would agree to it now. And I think any lawyer who does it without those kinds of preconditions to protect his client's attorney-client privileges would probably be guilty of malpractice. So I don't think you're going to see that kind of behind-the-scenes documentary anytime soon, if ever. I think that's really the important point about the staircase. It's not about guilt or innocence. It's not about whether Michael Peterson actually killed Kathleen Peterson or he didn't, whether the prosecution proved their case or they didn't. It's about how the criminal justice system worked in that particular case.
That's The Leader. You can find news, reviews and analysis in the Evening Standard newspaper or at standard.co.uk. Thanks for listening. We're back on Monday at 4 p.m.